They killed with extreme brutality, and they mocked the authorities. They played with other people's lives with no regrets. Some killers don't just commit crimes, they play games with the police. They leave taunting messages, send cryptic letters, and challenge the authorities to catch them. In some cases, these killers were never brought to justice, leaving behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions. Tonight, we'll be looking at 4 chilling cases where murderers didn't just kill, they mocked those who hunted them. From an elusive Italian serial killer to a jazz-loving axe murderer, a lipstick-scrawled plea for help, and a dismemberment spree that baffled even Eliot Ness. These killers left more than just bodies behind. They left messages, riddles, and a sense of unease that lingers to this day. Let's begin with our first case, the Monster of Florence. Between 1968 and 1985, a serial killer, or possibly multiple killers, terrorized the peaceful countryside of Florence, Italy. Known as Il Mostro di Firenze, or the Monster of Florence, this predator struck with chilling precision. The killer targeted young couples in secluded areas, often ambushing them in their cars. The male victim was usually shot first, but it was the brutality shown toward the female victims that set the crimes apart. The women were often sexually assaulted and mutilated in horrific ways, their bodies disfigured as if to send a message. The fear and paranoia that followed each murder took a heavy toll on the community, and the investigation soon became one of Italy's most notorious and mysterious cases. The killer, or killers, taunted authorities by evading capture for nearly 2 decades. Multiple suspects were arrested over the years, but none were definitively linked to the killings. Some theories suggest a single murderer, a sadistic individual with an obsession for control, while others believe the crimes were the work of a coordinated group, perhaps with ties to organized crime. The case caught the attention of crime writer Thomas Harris, who based aspects of his book Hannibal on the investigation, giving the Monster of Florence even more infamy. As investigations grew more complicated, rumors swirled that the killer left behind cryptic messages that hinted at a deeper, almost ritualistic motive. Despite countless theories and extensive investigations, the Monster of Florence was never caught, leaving behind a trail of horror and unanswered questions. The unsolved nature of the case still haunts Florence to this day, with the legend of the monster continuing to terrify locals. And just as authorities struggled to catch this elusive killer, another murderer from history mocked the police with a bizarre and unsettling musical ultimatum: the Axeman of New Orleans. Between 1918 and 1919, New Orleans was gripped by fear as a mysterious figure known as the Axeman of New Orleans prowled the city. The killer, who primarily targeted Italian-American grocers, broke into their homes during the night and attacked them with an axe, leaving their victims bloodied and often near death. The brutality of the murders and the seeming randomness of the attacks left both the public and the police in a state of terror and confusion. What set the Axeman apart, however, wasn't just his terrifying method of murder. It was the chilling letter he sent to the local newspapers. In March of 1919, the Axeman penned a letter that would go down in infamy. In the letter, the killer claimed to be a supernatural being from hell, and he issued a strange and eerie ultimatum. On the night of March 19th, he would spare anyone who played jazz music. The people of New Orleans took the Axeman's challenge seriously, and on the night of the 19th, jazz filled the streets. The sound of horns, drums, and melodies poured from homes, bars, and dance halls across the city. And, as promised, no one was killed that night. While the Axeman's cryptic letter was chilling, it only deepened the mystery surrounding his motives. Was he simply a deranged individual with a taste for violence, or was there a darker force at play? Some have suggested that the killings were tied to organized crime, while others have speculated that the killer was targeting certain ethnic groups. Despite numerous theories and countless suspects, including one notorious mafia figure, the Axeman was never caught, and his eerie message to New Orleans residents has become part of the city's lore. The legend of the Axeman lives on in both folklore and pop culture, a terrifying reminder of a killer who didn't just seek victims, but wanted an audience. Next, we look at another killer who left behind an unforgettable message, this time written in lipstick. In the 1940s, Chicago was shaken by a series of brutal murders attributed to a man the press would later call the Lipstick Killer. The crimes were shocking, not just for their violence, but for the eerie messages left behind at the crime scenes. These messages seemed to taunt both the victims and the police, adding a layer of psychological horror to an already horrific series of events. One of the most infamous of these murders was that of 6-year-old Suzanne Decnion in 1946. Suzanne was kidnapped from her bedroom, and a ransom note demanding $20,000 for her return was left behind. Tragically, her dismembered remains were discovered hours later, scattered across multiple locations in the city. The gruesomeness of the crime sent shockwaves through the community, and the investigation took a dark turn when police discovered the killer's unsettling pattern. In several cases, the killer left behind a lipstick-scrawled message at the crime scene. The most famous of these was found in the home of Frances Brown, another victim, where the killer wrote on the wall, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." The chilling plea seemed to mock the police's inability to capture him and hinted at the killer's sadistic pleasure in the game of cat and mouse with law enforcement. In the end, the investigation led to the arrest of a 17-year-old man named William Hirons, who confessed to the murders. Hirons, however, claimed that his alter ego, a mysterious figure named George, was responsible for the crimes. This statement only deepened the mystery and horror surrounding the case. Many still believe that Hirons' confession was coerced, and some argue that the true murderer may have walked free. Was Hirons the lipstick killer? Or was the real killer still out there, toying with the police in a twisted game of evasion? The case remains unresolved, and the haunting message left behind by the lipstick killer continues to fuel conspiracy theories and public debate. Whether Hirons was guilty or not, his confession and the killer's bizarre messages make this one of the most disturbing cases in American history. Finally, we turn to one of America's most gruesome, unsolved murder sprees, a case that even the legendary Eliot Ness couldn't solve. The Cleveland Torso Murderer. During the 1930s, the city of Cleveland, Ohio, was rocked by a series of grisly murders that left the city in a state of shock. A killer, later dubbed the Cleveland Torso Murderer, was believed to be responsible for the deaths of at least 12 victims, although the true number remains uncertain. What made the murders particularly terrifying was the brutality and precision of the killings. The victims were often drifters, the homeless, or those living in poverty, which led some to believe that the killer targeted vulnerable individuals who would be less likely to be missed. The bodies were found in a horrifying state, dismembered, with the heads and sometimes the hands removed, making identification nearly impossible. The killer's dismemberment methods suggested a level of skill that suggested the murders weren't simply the acts of a deranged individual, but possibly of someone with a surgical background or extensive knowledge of anatomy. The case became infamous not only because of its grisly nature, but also due to the involvement of Elliot Ness, the legendary lawman best known for his role in bringing down Al Capone. Ness, who was the director of Cleveland's safety department at the time, took personal responsibility for the case. He ordered raids on the city's homeless camps, hoping to find some trace of the killer. But the murders continued unabated. Some theories suggest that the killer may have taunted law enforcement with cryptic notes, further mocking their inability to stop the killings. Despite extensive investigations, the Cleveland Torso Murderer was never apprehended, and the case remains one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries in American criminal history. From the eerie jazz ultimatum of the Axeman to the chilling plea of the lipstick killer, these murderers all shared a common trait. They wanted attention. They didn't just kill, they wanted the world to know, and they wanted the police to chase them. Some of these cases remain unsolved, leaving behind lingering questions and dark legends. Others ended with confessions, but doubts and conspiracy theories continue to cloud the truth. What remains undeniable is the lasting terror these killers inflicted, not just through their crimes, but through the psychological warfare they waged against their pursuers. The scariest killers aren't just the ones who strike in the night. They're the ones who make sure you never forget them. Thanks for watching. If you found this case fascinating, be sure to like and subscribe for more true crime stories. Let us know in the comments which case haunted you the most.